And what was definitive in the FA Cup this weekend is that Liverpool are no longer a part of it. Spurs are no longer a part of it. Chelsea as well are also out of the FA Cup. Jay, first and foremost, to whom do you think it's more damning to be having exited the cup at this stage? Do you think Chelsea season suffers more because they left the FA Cup? Do you think Ange, Mister every 2 seasons I win a cup, his exit is a bigger blow? Do you think Slot, who's on the chase for a quadruple?
First of all, I'm going to tell you to whom it's more comforting. To Arsenal fans, right? Because you know by yourselves, and at least Arsenal got knocked out by Manchester United. I know Manchester United, they look the way that they look in the league, but it's still Manchester United. You know, like, I don't know. I think as an Arsenal fan, you can hang your head on the fact that it was not Plymouth, and the other two teams you mentioned were, of course, also knocked out by Premier League sides, but not the 13-time champions of the FA Cup. So there are levels.
Thank you, Jay. That's indirectly. There's some praise in this dismal season for Man United.
Chuck, but man, it's a tough one because it's another season where Liverpool were in quadruple conversation, which is actually, I know they don't go on to win the quadruple, but the fact that they that's something that continuously comes up for them, I think is a boon. You know, I think it's something that is. I mean, not worth celebrating, but it says something about the success consistently that they seem to garner across all different competitions. Because once again, they're in the Carabao Cup final and they topped the expanded Champions League group, and they are, of course, have a healthy lead in the Premier League. The fact that they lost against Plymouth, who were almost relegated if they'd stayed with Wayne Rooney, and have been struggling this season in the championship is that's the biggest shock, right? That is the biggest shock in terms of results. You did not see that one coming. But Chuck, I think it's most damning for Spurs because I look at a Chelsea, and I think Chelsea should go on to win the Conference League. If they don't win the Conference League, then it's another season where they haven't won anything. And now we're going back 5 seasons since they last won the Champions League, and outside of the Champions League, they haven't actually won anything else, you know. And the Champions League is so big that it does give you a cushion.
It's a buffer,
for it is a buffer, yes, for a long while. But when you're talking about Chelsea specifically, and we're talking about like 5 years now since they last won anything and going into a 6th year, and we've heard their coach Maresca talking about the fact that they don't, he's not looking at them challenging for the league for another 2 or 3 seasons. And now what you're talking about at that point, where you are successful enough where you're going to qualify for Europa or the Champions League, and of course you're still competing in the Carabao and the FA Cup. If it's 2 or 3 seasons before you qualifying, where you're competing for the league, does it not apply that it's maybe the same thing unless something goes your way in the cup competition as well? Now we're looking towards a decade, but I even with that in mind, I still think it's Spurs. And with Ange at Spurs specifically, because yes, we know Spurs haven't won anything since 2009, and they're not a team you look to winning anything, right? But having been knocked out the way that they were in the Carabao, where they were close, they were in the semi-final, they had the lead from the first leg, and then they were dismantled in that second leg. So that's gone. It's gone. They know nowhere close, of course, in the Premier League, and now in the FA Cup. And yes, it is against Aston Villa, who are a Champions League team, but it shows that these two teams have changed positions, you know, where Aston Villa are a very good side, where Spurs aren't. And it does not matter where they compete. It does not matter what they try. Yes, they've got a lot of injuries, you know that, but it just keeps getting worse. Where you might be looking for a silver lining, there is none that is coming around the way. So yes, as I'm saying, while I recognize that the biggest shock was Plymouth knocking out Liverpool, and you have a Chelsea who lost against a Brighton, who previously, last time we saw them on a football pitch, they lost 7-0 themselves, but they are still a good side, and which Aston Villa are as well. But I think the compounding of issues at Spurs under Ange, where maybe a deep run in the FA Cup and even going on to win it, that would have solved everything, you know, because Spurs are not choosers. They'll take anything that is a trophy, they will take it. So to have the season in the first week or so of February be absolutely done, and the way that it is, it's a spectacular failure, even for Tottenham Hotspurs.
Wow, Jay, said by someone who's a proper rival. Um, wow, I look at all
Spurs are not
three.
rivals, Shaq.
Yet
Yeah,
again, damning from an.
they in the derby, and I told you this the other time. The reason even Spurs find themselves in the Big Six is because they are success adjacent, because they're neighbors to Arsenal, who dragged them into a room because these are North London rivals. It's like, okay, here's Manchester United, Chelsea, Man City, and Liverpool. I suppose you are here now as well.
Might as well talk about you.
Yeah.
I think I look at the fact that, let me see if I can get round to my conclusion. If you look at the fact that Liverpool lost Klopp, and obviously it's a big change, right? And so far, the only thing to have gone wrong is them not getting knocked out of the FA Cup. Not too bad if you look at it from that perspective, right? Because top of the league, top of the Champions League, still, eligible for the final four for the Carabao Cup. Most likely our favourites as well going to that one. So not too bad if you look at it that way, right? And then we look at Chelsea and Spurs. Their form hasn't been great of late. Obviously, Spurs has been horrible, right? And so if I look at who Spurs are at this moment, was I expecting anything from them? Is it really damning that they got out yet again, lost another match because they've lost, I think, 7 of their last 8 games in the league? Not too much of a surprise, right? And then Chelsea, after spending all that money and having found some sort of form and having put a run together and have had a settled 11 in terms of here's who we trust. I think you think to yourself in terms of, okay, they went out against Premiership opposition, but when do they turn around this season? When does their season become decent, right? Then you look on their continental exploits. They still have the Conference League that is Chelsea. I think Spurs are still in the Europa. I think, if not, whatever. But I think because they always talk about the quadruple and they never get it, I wonder to myself, right? Will you then have a season where you've just bagged yourself the Carabao Cup and just that because the FA Cup you're out? I don't know, because the league is still tight. Champions League is anyone's guess in terms of where it's going to go. It can be, Jay, because, okay, not tight, but Arsenal are close enough to push them. And they seem to have fixed their affairs, and they're looking to go on a run. So what I'm saying is that it's still too early to then say go to Liverpool are taking it. It's not as shoehorned in as the Carabao Cup, where I think they're overwhelming favourites. I think the league for me looks like the Champions League in terms of you guys look good right now. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 2-3 months. I look at that, Jay, and I think to myself, then in terms of the team, of the players who were there against Plymouth Argyle, 8 of them are first team regulars. Your Darwins, your Elliots, your Endos, not regulars, but they play enough league game where you're like, okay, you guys are not properly all the way fringe players. Jota was also playing. So you think to yourself, shouldn't you guys get it over the line? And I wondered then to myself, are these guys capable of being called upon? And obviously, yes, that's the magic of the FA Cup. These upsets do happen. They don't necessarily define your season. But I wondered to myself that would it give confidence to someone like Darwin Núñez, Jota, who we know, at this point in time, rather, you've got your Cody Gakpo, you've got your Mo Salah, and you've got your Luis Diaz. That's the preferred lineup for slot. If injuries go down because you've been given a chance against Plymouth and you guys didn't pull it through the fire, do these guys have enough to get them all the way? So I think for me, in terms of who this team is, Liverpool, it's supposed to be all conquering, supposed to be top, the best team in Europe, top of the pile in the Premier League. This is more damning. It's a shock, but it's also more damning because I look at Spurs and I look at Chelsea and I'm like, that's how things are going. If United were knocked out by Leicester, that's how things are going currently. So I think for me, in terms of who they are and what they can do, this is more damning.